You're listening to podcasternews.com.
Welcome to the LA Story Podcast with Stevie Wilson.
Where we don't provide on-site childcare, we have childcare facilities near our offices, which are checked out by us, and we provide those facilities. We have a tremendous amount of employee assistance programs, adoption services. If children have problems, you can call the employee assistance hotline, and we provide counseling services.
As CEO, do you think you're a woman, you're a working mother, obviously, as the big boss, is that a focus for you in a way that companies run by men, it's just not quite as much of an issue? Do you think it's so important to have women at those highest levels in corporations in order to recognize the need?
Campbell, I tell you, this is a tough one because as a CEO, you've got to focus on the CEO first. I have many focus areas. For me to tell you that women's issues are my primary focus, I'd be lying to you.
Right.
However, what we do have is a very senior executive that I've appointed, whose only job, his job in terms of looking at a group, is worrying about women's issues. Just as we have a group worrying about African American issues, worrying about Hispanic issues, we have a women's issue. A women's group, that person focuses on women's issues. And we make sure that those issues are brought to the CEO's attention and we address them. I'll give you one. We have a group called Luminary that comes to our offices and teaches people how to manage their budgets, how to do time management and things like that. We don't offer that to all of the other groups. We offer it just for the women's group. So we make sure that we reach out to the women in different ways than we do to the other groups. In fact, we have a special group for women of color, because one thing we've discovered is that women of color, whether they're in the women's group or the African American group or the Hispanic group, they do need even more special attention because they get discriminated in different ways. So we've isolated them and we also give them special attention. We do all of that.
You touched on this a little bit right when we started, education, and we were talking earlier about how important that is to you and something you want to focus on in your next life. But more and more women today we know are earning advanced degrees. The downside to some of the research is there was a report out recently that girls are dropping out of high school at rates almost as high as boys, particularly girls of color. And what struck me is when you and I were talking earlier, you described this as a national security issue. Education.
Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
I think the state of education, K through 12 education in our country, and frankly, for underprivileged kids, the appalling state of education is a national security issue. I've long been an educator, and it breaks my heart that there could be very talented kids who might be the next Nobel Prize winner in the United States in chemistry or the next great composer in America, and they'll never get discovered because they're trapped in some public school that is just basically warehousing them. That makes me very, very sad. But I'll tell you, as Secretary of State, it makes me terrified. Because I know that if we cannot do better in educating our people, and I mean all of our people, then we are not going to be competitive in an economy, a global economy that is very competitive, where the numbers of engineers and scientists in other countries are outstripping the numbers that we train in the United States several-fold. And if we can't compete, and if our people can't compete for the highest level jobs, we're going to be protectionist. We're going to turn inward. The United States is not going to lead. But there's something more important. Charlotte Schultz, George Schultz's wife, I just ran into backstage, and George Schultz is one of my great mentors. And George told me, he said, being Secretary of State is the greatest job in government. He should have just said it's the greatest job because you get to represent this extraordinary country. I really love America for what it is. And you go out and you represent the United States and you recognize that what people respect about the United States, yes, our military strength, yes, our economic power, but really the values that we espouse. And by that I mean that people really do believe that this is a meritocracy, that you can come here from any place, from India or from Africa or from Latin America, whether you're the person who makes your way across the desert to make $5 instead of 50 cents, or whether you are the founder, one of the founders of Google, Sergey Brin, who comes from Russia and founds Google here. People believe that in America you really can succeed on merit. It's also a part of our national myth. And look, a myth is not something that's not true. It's a part of who you are. And what is our national myth? The log cabin. You can be born in a log cabin and you can still be president. But the only thing that makes that true is equal access to education for everybody.
Thanks for joining Stevie Wilson on LA Story. Feel free to check out other podcasts and videos. Bookmark it now. www.la-story.com.